to a third grade classroom, okay? There's a 9-year-old boy sitting in a desk, and all of a sudden, there's a puddle between there's a puddle at his feet, and the front of his pants are wet. He thinks his heart is going to stop because he cannot possibly imagine how this has happened. It's never happened before, and he knows that when the boys find out, he will never hear the end of it. When the girls find out, they'll never speak to him again as long as they live. The boy believes his heart is going to stop. He puts his hands down and prays this prayer. Dear God, this is an emergency. I need help now. 5 minutes from now, I'm dead meat. He looks up from his prayer, and here comes the teacher with the look in her eyes that says he's been discovered. As the teacher is walking toward him, a classmate named Susie is carrying a fishbowl that is filled with water. Susie trips in front of the teacher and inexplicably dumps the bowl of water into the boy's lap. The boy pretends to be angry, but all the while he's saying to himself, "Thank you, God, thank you, God." Now, all of a sudden, instead of being the object of ridicule, the boy is the object of sympathy. The teacher rushes him downstairs and gives him gym shorts to put on while his pants dry out. All the other children are on their hands and knees cleaning up around the desk. The sympathy is wonderful, but as life would have it, the ridicule that should have been his has been transferred to someone else, to Susie. She tries to help, but they tell her, "Get out, you've done enough, you klutz." Finally, at the end of the day, as they are waiting for the bus, the boy walks over to Susie and whispers, "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" She whispers back, "I wet my pants too once." Wow. That's a powerful story. Just in that story, what kind of things can we get out of that? Number one, judgment. Look at how things turned around from that situation. The situation didn't change at all, right? You know, his pants were wet or whatever, but it was the judgment or the thought that somebody perceived how they got there, how it got that way, right? So, and Susie, instead of judging, what did Susie do?
She tried to help.
She tried to help because she was empathetic.
Yeah.
So if we think about that, you know, one way as far as turning our judgment around or getting out of judgment is to be empathetic. Right? I know, and we talked about this in class, in our last class, about, you know, I know when I was going through a divorce and everything, it was attack, defend, and, you know, we all had our positions and we were both right. And, you know, my mentor said, you know, Nancy, maybe you ought to say, you know, you might have a point. Let me meditate on that, or let me think about that, and I'll get back to you. And when I would go, and I would always come back with a different perspective, because I could see his point of view. And there was no judgment anymore. You know, there was no right or wrong, because, you know, I could see we were both coming from fear. And once fear dissolves, we can return to love. Marianne Williamson wrote a great book, and it's called Return to Love, and it's based on A Course in Miracles. And, you know, it talks about how when we let go of fear, we can return to love. And fear, since fear causes our judgment. So how else can we drop our judgment? I put a little page of a book in your bulletin. So anyways, just quickly scan that page, and I want you to tell me about the story. Do you have it? Does no? Just have it. It's a.
The actress one, the Monodyne.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you can just read a couple of sentences or something like that of it. So, it must have got in everyone. So once everybody's done reading it, I want somebody to tell me about the story.
How many different versions do you want?
You're going to tell me about the story, Lucas? Go ahead.
Well, at the beginning, it says that Megan's mom is an actress and she's a lawyer. And so it looks like that she's doing an interview so far.
Looks like she's doing an interview. So, okay, so that's a book. That's a book. It's a page from a book. So tell me, Lucas, do you like the book?
Yeah.
Do you like the story? Yeah? Is it going to have a good ending or a bad ending?
Good.
A good ending. Okay. Does anybody else have a book that's going to have a bad ending? What?
Yeah.
Yours might have a bad ending?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Pearl Harbor.
what's my point here? When something happens in life,
What is the bad outcome? Is that what you're saying?
no, not necessarily. I'm saying what I want to point out here is, go ahead.
They judge what's happening as either good or bad.
Okay, all righty. When something happens to us, one day of our life or one situation or whatever, how much information do we have? One page. We have one page of the book. You know, and sometimes I do this, but I didn't want to give puzzle pieces out because I gave that for something else. But sometimes when I do speaking and I give a message on judgment, I give a puzzle piece. And I say, you know, when something happens, we have one little piece of the puzzle. And yet, from that piece of the puzzle, from that page of the book, we make up this whole big story. Okay? We see somebody do something one time, and all of a sudden there's a lot of judgment. Oh, that guy's this, that guy's that, you know, whatever. We see him one time, and we make this big judgment. Something happens to us, and we make this big judgment. It's going to be good, it's going to be bad, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, he said, she said, whatever. You know, on a daily basis, you know, we make all kinds of judgments based on nothing. No real facts, but our little perception, our little thing, what we see in that one page of the book. And when we make our decision or our judgment, it's always our past experiences, what we believe to be true, what we have, the baggage that we have carried along, and then we go and we make our judgments and we create our story. We create our story from that page of the book. But what happens once we create that story?
I think we just
You
kind
start
of
believing it.
We start believing it, and our life becomes that story.
twist the facts to suit the story.
Exactly. And God always helps us, doesn't he? Universe always helps to create to create our story, to self-fulfilling prophecy, basically. Yeah, go ahead.
As you get rid of that judgment, now we can work on this one.
Exactly.
What it is.
Exactly.
You know, put this on the back burner and now we can focus on this one. When we come up with that story again.
Yeah. So and it's interesting because if you think about life, how much life is based on our judgments and the story that we make up about it. And then we become that story. You know, that story becomes true for us because we have made that story. We have created that story. And I love, you know, Course in Miracles has really, really incredible stuff in it. And it says a portion of judgment. And let me read this. It says, how is judgment relinquished? Recognizing that judgment, in order to judge everything rightly, one would have to be fully aware of an inconceivable wide range of things. The past, the present, and to come. One would have to recognize in advance all the effects of his judgment on everyone and everything involved in them in any way. And one would have to be certain there is no distortion in his perception so that his judgment would be wholly fair to everyone on whom it rests now and in the future. Who is in a position to do that? Any of us here? What's that?
All of us, really.
We know every fact about everything.
No, we don't know everything.
Okay, that's the thing. It says For you to be able to judge, for us to be able to judge, we would have to know all the facts. We would have to know the facts about every person involved, their past, their present, their future. We would have to know the facts of this situation, the past, the present, the future. We would have to know all these things, then we can judge. And, you know, it says, who is in a position to do that? Who, except in grandiose fantasies, would claim that for himself? So, you know, A Course in Miracles goes on to say, you know, that it's easy to give up judgment when we realize that we can't judge. There's no way we can judge. We can judge rightly. So it should be easy for us to give up judgment. So when we judge, or when we make our little judgments and create our little stories, who's the person that we create the stories most about? Ourselves. You know, a lot of times we're judging ourselves, and we're judging ourselves very, very harshly. You know, we forget who we are, and we judge ourselves through the eyes of everything that we did wrong. You know, we're afraid of we judge ourselves out of fear, basically. You know, you said we judge everything out of fear. Think about how it would be if we would start judging ourselves through unconditional love instead of through the eyes of fear. It says wisdom is not judgment. It is the relinquishment of judgment. Wow. Wisdom is not judgment, it's the relinquishment of judgment. Make then but one more judgment. It is this: there is someone with you whose judgment is perfect. He does know all the facts, past, present, and to come. He does know all the effects of his judgment on everyone and everything involved in any way, and he is wholly fair to everyone, for there is no distortion in his perception. Therefore, lay judgment down, not with regret, but with a sigh of gratitude. Wow. How grateful, or what a load off our shoulders that we wouldn't have to judge anymore. You know, think about it. We don't have to judge anymore. We can just walk with the knowing that inner being with us, that inner being who is us, basically, knows and has the wisdom. I love this little story, and I know I've read it before, but it bears repeating. The Cookie Thief. A woman was waiting in an airport one night with several long hours before her flight. She hunted for a book in the airport shops, bought a bag of cookies, and found a place to drop. She was engrossed in her book and happened to see that the man sitting beside her was as bold as could be. Grabbed a cookie or two from the bag in between, which she tried to ignore to avoid a scene. So she munched the cookies and watched the clock as this gutsy cookie thief diminished her stock. She was getting more irritated as the minutes ticked by, thinking, if I wasn't so nice, I'd blacken his eye. With each cookie she took, he took one too. When there was only one left, she wondered what he'd do. With a smile on his face and a nervous laugh, he took the last cookie and broke it in half. He offered her half and he ate the other. She snatched it from him and thought, oh, brother, this guy has some nerve and he's also rude. Why, he didn't even show any gratitude. She had never known when she'd been so galled, and sighed with relief when her flight was called. She gathered her belongings and headed for the gate, refusing to look back at that thieving ingrate. She boarded the plane and sank in her seat, then sought her book, which was almost complete. As she reached in her baggage, she gasped with surprise. There was her bag of cookies in front of her eyes. If mine are here, she moaned in despair. The others were his, and he tried to share. Too late to apologize, she realized with grief that she was the rude one, the ingrate, the thief. Wow, how powerful. That's the effect of judgment. She had her page of the story. You know, and her page of the story said, that was my bag of cookies, and there was no other thought otherwise.
There's an odd thing about that. It's a paradox. He was thinking the same thing. That's weird. I never looked at it that way.
Yeah.
I think it could be on both ends.
Yeah, exactly. So what was, and you know what? And think about that. So who was the bigger person? He was thinking the same thing. He's thinking, well, she's eating my cookies. However, he made that judgment, and instead of out of fear being angry, he showed unconditional love and shared. And that's the thing with the Course in Miracles. It says, you know, somebody's actions, and that's great that you pointed that out, because I use this story all the time, and I never actually even thought about that. But that's really awesome, because in the Course in Miracles, it says our actions are either out of love or a call for love. Somebody in fear and calling out for love. And our mission is when we see somebody acting out of fear and calling for love, we're supposed to respond with unconditional love. However, what do we respond with most of the time? Anger, aggravation, whatever. Annoyance, depending on what's happening with the situation. You know, instead of responding with unconditional love. And that's the judgment, though, because we sit here and we judge that that's wrong. You know, there's a right, there's a wrong, there's a this, there's a that. Instead of saying, you know what, this is happening, this person is not in love. You know, he's not acting from love. As the bigger person, I need to show love to him. Wow. And that's powerful, and that's hard to do. Depending on what's happening to us. It's very hard to do. But that's what we're asked to do. And, you know, a lot of times when we, you know, go from empathy, or when we live from empathy, putting ourselves in that person's shoes, a lot of times we can act from empathy and go back to love. It's a return to love.
It makes for a much happier life if you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off and is weaving and going really fast in traffic. You think to yourself, oh, they must really need to get somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, instead of going, well, you know, what's he doing? He just cut me off. It makes your life a lot more pleasant.
Yeah.
They must have a real reason for doing that. And bless them on their way.
Yeah, and you know, there's a story I read so many stories, but there's also too is you know, we go and to the you know, we judge the couple walking in front of us really slowly, you know, saying, come on, you know, move it in the grocery line or whatever, not realizing that, you know, she just got a diagnosis and they don't have that much time together. So they want to go slow and savor every moment. You know, we get upset with the guy at the checkout counter, the young kids with the dreadlocks saying, you know, why he can't even count, he can't do this, he can't do that. But we don't realize that, you know, he has a lot on his mind. You know, he just got his scholarship cut and he doesn't know where he's going to get the money to finish college. And, you know, all of these things, you know, the person that cuts yourself in the road, you know, off in the road, you know, we don't know that, you know, he just got notice that his son or his daughter is in the emergency room and he wants to get there. But we make that judgment. We make that judgment and we go from there.
Oh, this is funny. He's making things. Friday night I was in line for groceries at Walmart, and this woman in front of us, we were in line 15 minutes, that's no kidding. She had assistants, so they had to sign her checks, and she's tied up the whole line. This woman judged herself. She starts screaming, why don't you open up another register? Can't you see there's people waiting? And she was one. It was so funny. I never thought about that. She was judging herself.
Yeah. Yep.
See the front of her. Well, where's management? Open up another register. She was screaming to it. I'm sitting there like, okay.
Yeah.
Good job for me. I don't have to say nothing.
Because but out of fear, you know, out of fear that she was being judged, she wanted to protect herself. Yeah.
There was a guy in front of me who goes, I don't care, I'm a truck driver, I got a layer. He bought a bunch of pills. He goes, I got a layer, I don't care, we can stay here all night. I wouldn't mind if we moved stay here for a while.
Yeah.
Because the other lines weren't moving either. So. But yeah, she judged herself. I never thought about that.
Yep. And it's very interesting to take a day and just sit back and observe. Just sit back and observe and see people's reactions, different reactions to scenarios. And as people act differently, you can see where they're coming from, you know, what kind of fear they're playing out, or what kind of, you know, the person that's saying, you know, hey, that's okay, you know, is an acceptance, as opposed to the person that isn't, and, you know, all of those things. You know, you can kind of see in consciousness where people are. But it's interesting to see that. And they all make their judgment, and they're all very right in their own mind.
Because my husband, now this is the judgment, but he is the glass half empty. And so his comment to me was, well, somebody has to live in the real world.
and you can say, and somebody has to make the real world, right?
I live in reality.
Yeah, I like that one.
That's the thing I always struggle with. I can't figure out when, I mean, first of all, if you don't have, I mean, sorry, if you don't have a judgment, then you're a little bit docile, and things can happen around you, and you could be affected by it. We will be affected by it, positive, negatively, but at the same time, there's other folks that say you can't judge, and they're the ones that are judging. It's always been a struggle for me. And I tell my kids to do this is the way we do this, or don't slam the door because you might pinch your fingers. That's a judgment. But so I always try to find where's the middle ground here?
Discernment.
And discernment. And you know, yeah, it's almost like the thing that, you know, people that judge, they're the reason that this world is the way they are, right? And and right, how does it go? People that judge, they're the reason that this world is the way they are, and those that blame, they're the ones that cause it. You know, so I just did everything. I judged, I blamed, you know. So it's like, you know, we at the minute that we make that statement, almost we're like into it, and that's very interesting. But that's the thing as far as living spiritually in the world today, living spiritually in the physical. However, do you know what is interesting is when you really get to the concept of consciousness, that we make and create our own reality. Once we get to that point and stop judging, that will fall away. It will fall away, and that situation won't be there. It's only there because we have judged it that way, and that's the irony of it all.
Right.
You know, everything's backwards. You know, everything's backwards. Really, in the spiritual realm, is, you know, we think it's the way it is because, I mean, we think that we judge because of the way it is. However, it's the way it is because that's the way we've judged it. So, you know, it's very interesting. If you judge something as bad, and it is that, okay, the three umpires making the call. Okay, three umpires making a call. First umpire, they ask, how do you make a call? The first umpire said, I call it the way it is. And the second umpire said, I call it the way I see it. And the third umpire said, it isn't anything until I call it. So there it is. You know, same with life. When we look at it and we judge it and we call it, it becomes that. Because life is just you know, possibilities. It's like the wave in the realm of possibilities. But once we look at it and judge it, it becomes solid. It becomes physical for us.
There's a saying, we don't see the world the way it is. We see the world the way we are.
Exactly. And that's why some people see a hostile world, some people see a loving world. It's by their own judgments.
It's interesting, because I was making that observation. I had gone to a career fair with my goddaughter last week, and I spent a lot of time sitting and watching while she filled out applications and so on, and I was looking at the people there and how they dressed and how they presented themselves, their deportment, and I thought, but because that's a position, you're going to be judged when you're going to a job interview. You know, they have to discern if you're going to be the kind of person that will fit in to their company. And so as I looked at these people, you know, I said to Kendra, she kept saying, you can see how people view themselves by how they dress and how they present themselves to the world. You know, it's their self-view that you're seeing. That I am this kind of person, I am that kind of person. You know, because the one fella came in dirty jeans and, you know, mismatched clothes and sort of down look. I thought, he's perceiving himself as somebody not worthy of
Well, you were
being
judging
clean.
them.
You see how they perceive themselves.
So put my hair under my hat and went back in.
Yeah, sign, and the sign said, yeah. yeah. Very, very, very good. But it is, one of the things, and I know from class, I think one of the biggest things that the people in that class could take away from that was to just take the time to stand back as an observer and view our thoughts. View our thoughts as far as our thoughts to the world. Because then we see how much judging we do. We see where our thinking is. We see where our consciousness is. Are we negative? Are we positive? Whatever. And then when you find yourself start making a judgment, say, here comes the judge. And realize, that's all I'm doing. It's all my judgment. It's my perception. However, again, once we try to change that around, turn that around, see how different the situation looks. Because once we get rid of that, once we drop that judgment, that whole situation will change.
How can you know? It is a tough call, I accept as a mother, I've been always judging my son's friends. Is this, how the parents are, how he
She's
is.
right, by the way.
When you give a little give a chance for certain, friendship, and then but you always have it in the back of your mind, I don't know, the time is gonna tell me, and then it is true what it's inside, it comes true, maybe because I already put that out there, the thought, but I already. The whole thing started, I'm judging the parents, I'm judging the child, the behavior, what the way he talks, the way he plays, the way he, and the parents is
And do you know what?
one thing, and then change the mind. I always put it, what is that? Is that judgmental? Is that being very careful, or that's
No, she.
A couple of
What do you think?
a couple of things, and I'm not gonna make a judgment for you judging, but I'll try not to make a judgment. But just some things to think about. Okay, remember the movie that we watched when we focused on the basketball?
Yeah.
Okay, what we look for, we see. So a lot of times, if we judge somebody as bad character, we will look for that because we look for everything to substantiate our own judgment because we have created that. So, it's very, very interesting, very interesting. A lot of times we will look for what we intend to see. And I know my mentor said to me, when I started out on a spiritual path, she said, whatever you look for in any situation, good or bad, you will find it. Because it's a matter of I'm going to look for that. If I look for a good in a person, if I continuously say, every person I meet today, I'm going to find something good in it, I'm going to get the best in it, and guess what? You will bring out the best in that person by seeing it. By seeing it there, you will make it real for them and for you. And that's what's hard to understand. That's what's really hard to understand is, by seeing it, we make it real. We have to believe it to see it. So.
I just wanted to say, like in Maria's case, or like a mother's intuition, or different situations, because always affirming and saying, this is the way it is, really, I believe in law of attraction. It makes it happen. Mm-hmm. Let's say we forgot, and we're in a bad place, and we attracted something negative. I think intuition will tell us, oh, don't go that way, or okay, this person isn't really who I want to hang out with today. You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
right.
It's a feeling. It's not a mental.
Right, right. And you can discern, and we have to know by law of attraction. The Bible even says, what I have feared has come upon me. Again, and why has it come upon me? Because I created it. So basically, so it's all. Yeah, it is. It's all very mind-boggling, and you know, so it's very interesting. But think about and you know, think about leaving today and being aware of our judgments. Being aware of our judgments and how those judgments take us away from unconditional love. And whenever we can, make an attempt to let that judgment go, knowing that we don't have enough information to judge, and see that unconditional love coming back, because that is what will happen. So we're gonna go into meditation. I invite everyone to get comfortable in their seat, and yeah, go ahead. Get comfortable in your seat. Feel the seat supporting your body. See the floor supporting your feet. When you're ready, you can take a deep breath, close your eyes. Just feel the energy in the room. Feel that connection. Go into that place of that knowing. That the knowing that the Father and I are one. That spark of divinity lives within us. All those qualities of God we carry within us. I ask you now to make a commitment and ask that those things that are blocking those qualities, those things that are covering up our unconditional love, all those judgments, that we can identify them for what they are, and we have the strength to let them go and see God, see the Christ within every situation and every person. I invite you right now to take one situation or one person who you have judged and you would like to return to love. Hold that person in mind. See them enveloped in the divine light of God. Know that whatever it is that has made you judge them was their coming from fear, or you're coming from fear. And once we allow ourselves to let go of that fear, we'll return to unconditional love. Make a commitment to see through that judgment. To drop all condemnation. So that what we can do this week is go out and express love. For love is truly a choice. As we make this choice to drop fear, to drop our judgment, feel the overwhelming spirit of love filling your heart, filling your minds, filling your thoughts. Feel the lightness come about you. Feel the need for judgment to be washed away. As you feel lifted, as you feel lighter, as you feel that spark of unconditional love, I invite you to make a commitment to see only love in the others. See Christ within. Know that if someone comes crying for love, that you can return that love. And so it is. I invite you, as you feel ready, to feel the seat behind, support your body. Open your eyes and come back into this room. Okay. And our music is Love Is My Decision, and